Hey, me and the gang were wondering if you thought.
What was that?
Can you blush?
Here we go, Bobby.
Oh, I get it. I see now. You've been training for 2 years to take me out. And now here I am. Ooh, it's exciting, isn't it? Okay, here's your chance. Come on. Come on, what are you waiting for? Here I am, right in front of you. Go ahead. Adolf here gets the first shot. Come on, what are you looking at her for? You need permission? Or maybe you need a little bit of incentive, huh? Okay, I can help you with that. What's the matter? You missed that? It's okay, I can do it again.
Dobret, Reinhardt. Dobret!
Come on. Well, you need a manual? Do it! Come on! MC Hall! Now you got an explosive device stuck to the back of your hand. Silver nitrate. Rigged to go off if anybody tampers with it. I'll have the detonator with me.
You so much as look at me wrong.
From now on, we work as a unit. You be taking orders from me.
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. Or right. I'm Reese, the host. To my left is...
David.
Further to my left...
Irina.
Across from me...
Noah.
Oh, no name this time? Okay.
No,
he's still
I couldn't remember
He's-
that
you were
like weird alien-looking
It's
dude.
like Nurgle or something.
Nerd. Yeah, we'll go with that.
No, Nerdoc. I don't know what his name is.
Yo, my name's Nerdoc.
Nerd dog. It's like Daredevil if instead was a
Oh,
nerd.
Matt Murdock.
Yeah.
My name's Nat Nerdoc.
And off in a distant land we have...
AJ.
Today we're talking about Blade 2, a movie that came out in 2002. It's directed by Guillermo del Toro, who also directed Kronos, Mimic, The Devil's Backbone, Hellboy 1 and 2, Pan's Labyrinth, Pacific Rim, Crimson Peak, and The Shape of Water.
I didn't realize he did comedies.
Yeah, well, wait. I'm confused.
Like I didn't really get his style on the ice skating, like the costumes and
What?
talking about
Blades of Glory. AJ.
No Will Ferrell in this movie. If
You didn't get it
dream
with
though,
that Aerosmith?
If you can dream it, you can do it.
The movie stars Wesley Snipes, Chris Christopherson, Ron Pearlman, Leonore Varela, Norman Reedus, Thomas Kretschmann, Luke Goss, Matt Schultz, Danny John Jules, and Donnie Yin.
Pretty
Movie.
good cast in this one.
Yeah, good
Or
cast.
at least, maybe at the time, a lot of them weren't as big. Like Norman Reedus wasn't a big...
Yeah, and surprisingly, a lot of Guillermo del Toro mainstays, like a lot of these faces you see in his future movies
Ron
as well.
Pearlman and Luke Goss.
Yeah, Ron Perlman. That was a surprise for me. And,
Yeah.
well, Norman Reedus was a bigger surprise.
Yeah. The movie was written again by David S. Goyer, who penned the first film, and it's based on Blade by Marv Wolfman. Yet again, obviously. It's called Blade.
Really?
On this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So guys, had y'all seen Blade 2 before this episode? I'm going to go with you first, AJ.
Yes, I had. I don't remember details where, but I definitely had seen it.
All right. Noah.
No. Although, I do recall bits and pieces of this. I think someone had it on in a different room, and I just happened to see a couple of things.
Yeah. Irina?
I seem to remember the first time I watched this, I sort of just binge watched the series. So I watched the first one and then, all right, time for Blade 2. And, it just kind of runs right into that one. So,
Yeah, what am I talking about? Crystal Method definitely stands out for me on this.
Yeah. Are you like me, and when you try to binge a franchise, it's like you'll get through 2, and then after that, it's just kind of a crapshoot. Like,
No, Reese, other than, well, I guess if you don't include your Fast and Furious.
oh, I'll make
Bond.
it through all those. Yeah.
Oh, no, Reese came over once. He's like, hey, David, I know you haven't seen the Fast and Furious franchise in a while. Do we make it through 5 in like one day?
It was something crazy.
Yeah, that was the most amount in a franchise I've ever seen.
They're
That's
great,
just
though.
I don't know if
About
I
a-
want to do it again, though.
That's
will.
about as long as a Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, 5 Fast and Furious movies equals 1 Lord of the Rings
That's true.
trilogy.
It does.
David, had you seen Blade 2 before?
Nope, not at all. This is not familiar to me in any way.
And this is, again, a situation just like the first Blade where I feel like I've seen half of this one. I don't know what it is with me in these movies, just seeing half of them. Like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
But I remember distinctly the first half of this movie, and then after that, I was like, nope, I must have...
Probably walked out of the room.
No, I don't know what happened. Whatever happened, though, I did not watch the second half of this movie, but definitely remember the weird CGI ninja antics. Other than that, though,
Antics?
Glorious.
yes. The glorious. Sorry.
Thank
Sorry.
you, AJ. Thank you.
And
Are y'all ready to get into the story here? Actually, David, do you want to do the call to action real quick?
Yeah. So if you haven't already, please follow, like, subscribe, all the above. If you could give us a rating on Apple, give us those 5 stars, leave us a review, share us with your friends. Anything helps. We really enjoy doing this podcast, and every little thing you guys can do to help helps keep us going. So thanks, and yeah, go ahead.
Help.
All right, let's get into that story.
There's a world beyond the one we know, where the powers of darkness fear nothing but one man. Stop! Blade.
We represent the ruling body of the vampire nation. They're offering you a truce. They want to meet with you.
You sure about this?
They'll take us in deeper than we've ever been.
Now, those he has sworn to kill need his help to fight a new breed of terror.
They're no longer top of the food chain.
Our forces are ready to fight, but we need a leader.
Let me get this right. You want me to hunt them? For you?
Ooh, so exciting.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Keep your friends close. Keep your enemies closer. Coming on, freaks. Coming on, freaks now.
In 1999, 2 years after the events of the first Blade film, Blade is searching in Prague for his mentor, Abraham Whistler, who is thought to have died after being attacked by Deacon Frost and his vampire pack, but instead was turned into a vampire. Blade discovers Whistler being held at a vampire safe house. After returning to their headquarters, Blade gives Whistler an antivirus vampire serum to revert him back to human. Unbeknownst to Blade, a pandemic known as the Reaper virus has spread through the vampire community. Infected vampires are being turned into Reapers, a mutation of vampires immune to most vampire weaknesses, who kill humans and turn any vampires they feed on into Reapers. Unable to contain the Reapers, vampire lord Eli Damaskinos sends 2 emissaries, Assad and his daughter Nisa, to seek Blade's assistance. Damaskinos explains that Jared Nomak, a vampire, became infected with the Reaper virus and is purposefully feeding on other vampires, spreading the virus. Damaskinos warns Blade that after Nomak is done feeding on vampires, he will begin to feed on humans. Blade reluctantly agrees to help. Assad then introduces Blade and his group to the Blood Pack, a group of vampires trained to kill Blade. In addition to Assad and Nisa, the Blood Pack consists of Reinhardt, Chupa, Snowman, Varlane, Lighthammer, and Priest. To keep them in line, Blade plants an explosive charge on the back of Reinhardt's head.
You just because we're at the end of this whole thing, I want to just jump straight into those names, but I'm going to resist. But remind me.
I'll remind you.
Remind me.
I don't promise, but I will remind you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Also, Damaskinos.
Damaskinos.
You got some Greek.
Yep, that's true. So what I didn't have anything else
No,
to say
there's
to
nothing. I shouldn't even have said it.
So right off the bat, as I usually say, this movie has a different vibe than the first one. I mean, it's still upfront about what it is, but it's, I don't know, I can't explain it. It feels Del Toro, you know?
Yeah, it does.
I yes and no. I feel like the vibe isn't actually too far off because I didn't pay that much attention to who the director was, and I think Del Toro captured the mood that the first one did.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize there was a director change at first, so it wasn't too dramatic.
I think I could sense a change in energy, like it not from high to low or low to high. It was just slightly different, and I think I think they begin this Blade character as not having emotional baggage. Almost like he's kind of just going straight into it, like I'm killing vampires and I'm enjoying it, sort of an attitude.
The action is different. It is much more acrobatic, a lot more moves per second, I guess. A lot more flailing. I was mean.
I don't know if flailing is the right word. There's a lot more choreography.
Yeah, I feel like the choreography is tighter and more refined and more in the style of, it's a little bit showier, more kung fu-esque. But I still think it's like deliberate.
Yeah.
So I don't take issue with it. I just think it has a little bit of a different finish.
It's
that is
different.
that, Del Toro take.
In addition to that, as far as like the director change and the mood change, one of the first things you notice going into this one is that it drops a lot of the blue, and it's actually more of a orangish, reddish color going into it.
Okay, so they switch back and forth because they actually start heavy blue on this, and then they switch to yellow. They do both.
Well,
that's a Del Toro thing. He really, really loves his color, and especially in lighting. So you're always going to see that, and it's never one consistent color. It's just he has this sort of high contrast. He references it as chiaroscuro, so it's like a hard contrast between shadow and light, and he carries that throughout most of his films.
Yeah, more.
And he's got the monochromatic flashbacks, so there's definitely, I mean, his style carries over.
Yeah.
About the choreography in this, I was watching an interview with Guillermo del Toro, and he was talking about, and this is just a stylistic choice, but he really wanted his fight scenes to be choreographed like a dance almost. So that's why he chose the martial arts aspect. And he didn't want the scenes to be a bunch of cutting and changing angles and perspectives. So he just wanted it all to be sort of a fluid sequence without having to cut it. And he wanted to cut as little as possible from those scenes.
Yeah, and that's something I didn't mention in the first. There were some jarring edits and cuts in the first that did feel less professional or were jarring, but
more forced,
I definitely get
would say.
The wanted to be more fluid and flowing without disruption of it. And you've got Donnie Yen in this movie, and I think he had a little bit of consulting input as well.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think he was the main stunt choreographer in general. Like, he did all of it. And he's one of the main people in this, or I guess sub characters.
Yeah, I would have liked to see more of his character himself, but I think he had a lot of behind the scenes input.
Yeah.
So we also get the setup of Nomak, the new villain of the week for this movie.
That's his name, Nomak.
His thing is basically he wants to kill all the vampires. World domination yet again.
But we get a classic, well, I guess maybe not classic at the time, but a Del Toro flair with their design.
Yeah. Definitely very, grotesque.
I don't know if grotesque is the right word.
No, it gets grotesque.
Grotesque is good.
Yeah,
horrific, I guess.
The whole
adjective.
Yeah.
It's
But
definitely
the bifurcated
in keeping
jaw.
with his design.
Yeah.
That's a good way to phrase it.
Yes, that's the smart way to phrase it.
That's the intelligent way. I'm like, the mouth splits open.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm just going to bring up all of the things that Del Toro has said in this interview because we happen to be hitting them all right now, is he had this concept for vampires even before Blade 2 or before Blade, and he had originally pitched this for I Am Legend, and it was this concept of like this creature that doesn't really have a lower jaw, so there's sort of this negative space. And he liked the concept of making it almost snake-like, where their bite sort of accommodates, like their jaw accommodates the bite they're about to take. And he actually got some influence from a book, a treatise on vampires from the 1700s that describes vampires as having a kind of like a stinger hidden beneath their tongues so that they could
that was that thing that pops
victims.
out like the alien from...
It's very animal, like, or spider almost.
Yeah. And then the other influencing factor was that he said he saw a picture of a shotgun victim where like their lower jaw was just kind of blasted, and he said it was really horrific to look at and shocking, and it kind of stuck with him. So that's the image you get here, is just that assembly of those images.
Yes, I would say grotesque applies.
So Del Toro was seeing this image of a guy with a shotgun wound, and he's like, that's my guy.
Make an organic version of that.
Make that my vampire.
I love just watching these interviews with Del Toro, because he has this little book that he carries around everywhere, and he writes all his notes and little scribblings and drawings, and he shows it to the camera. He's like, and this is what I drew for this, and this is like, and it's just kind of,
you make him sound
sharing, it's kind of sharing like a little kid's diary or something.
You make it sound like the guy from The Office or Office Space. Like, this is my stapler. This is my book of drawings.
It's actually really sweet.
Vampires, and this is the way
he's such a lovable guy.
I know, like every time I see him, I just he makes me
down.
happy.
I will burn it down.
Well, yeah, I even feel like a lot of the sewer scenes, especially later on, were like evoked Hellboy to me a little bit too.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially Hellboy 2, in my opinion.
I was talking to Irene about that specifically. I definitely got Hellboy 2 vibes.
Yeah, I feel like this was his like proof of concept for what Hellboy would eventually be.
Right.
I could be completely wrong in that assumption, but it just feels like, okay, this is what I can do now, so that then I can do this later. But who knows? That's just me speculating. Anyway, how do we feel about how they kind of incorporate Whistler back into this plot? I thought it was kind of like clunky.
It felt very unceremonious. Like this was such a big moment in the previous film, his death, and now it's just
diminished.
He's just still alive.
And it doesn't really make sense why.
Well, I think part of it was we weren't there for the discovery that he actually was alive. It's just kind of mentioned.
Also, the main problem with this, the entire opening credits sequence sets up the plot like he's the bad guy in this, and then he's seeking him out, and there's going to be this big confrontation, and then that's over and done with within like 10 minutes of the movie.
Well, sort of. They definitely try to hint at issues later in the movie.
They're setting up suspicion.
It's almost confusing because when, like you said, when they were setting it up in the beginning, it's more of Blade saying like, and my best friend is the thing I hate the most.
Yeah.
He's a vampire now. And you're like, oh, no, this is going to be bad.
Yeah. I actually want to see that movie.
But they don't really explain the transition. They're like, okay, we injected him with something, and then we're going to leave him and see if it works. And he's like, oh, it worked. All right.
It did say he was infected at the end of in the first movie. But
Isn't that... Wait, hold on. Isn't that a plot hole in the first one?
No,
because he shoots himself and you think he's dead.
No, not that.
Let AJ.
That girl came up with a cure, didn't she?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he just use that if he was infected?
Wait, was it a cure?
That's what I thought that they said, because she said that whole thing, like, it'll work with me, but
I don't think it was fully...
But not with him, and then he's like, well, is your cure gonna work on... Or, like, he says, well, I'll just maybe take that cure. And she's like, well, at that point, you would have to sacrifice your strength.
You could be right. Yeah, I think she made a distinction. It doesn't work on pure bloods, but it does work if you returned.
Oh, no, here it is. She was already captured. She had been captured at that point.
Yeah, I don't think it was readily available at the time, and you have to use it, like, immediately.
All right, good
and
point.
They just ransacked their base anyway, so...
Right.
Yeah.
But I would say, since we don't see the actual event... it's implied that he commits suicide, but, he could have just dropped the pistol. He could have actually shot himself, but the vampire power was already, taking him over and overcame the mortal wound, or what would normally be a mortal wound. So I think that can be explained. It's the trope in like every zombie movie, like, is this person going to sacrifice themselves before they turn, or are they going to hide their wounds? Like, it's kind of maybe, you, at the point of death, like, you're facing this dilemma, like, I don't want to die. I don't want to kill myself.
Right.
Like,
yeah, there's definitely precedent to say that he regenerated through vampire powers after doing that.
But it's all speculation.
Even with real victims, there are said to have been people who were shot in the head and then survived later.
Either way, this kind of reworking Whistler back into the plot. The little montage in the beginning talking about Whistler and how he was infected and now he needs to go find him just made me feel like I missed a film.
Yeah.
If I had watched Blade and then this was thrown on without anyone telling me it was Blade 2, I would think I had skipped one.
Yeah, it's definitely spoiled where something could have been a shock, like twist, like, oh, wow, that's Whistler right there. Like,
right.
It just felt like it didn't need to happen. Like, we didn't need Whistler in this movie. As much as it's great to see him again, and Chris Christopherson was, did such a good job as the character. Mm-hmm. I don't think this movie was begging for him to be in this.
I would be more okay with it if it was just Blade coming to this facility because he's wiping out vampires anyway, and then finding that chamber where, wait, what is that Whistler?
Oh, yeah,
and then,
that would be...
Oh, I'm going to bring him back because I have no idea what's going on.
It's so pointless that they set up this, like, rivalry almost that's brewing.
And then it's just kind of torn apart by the time he gets him back to the base. Yeah.
Even though, they try to, like, keep, as AJ mentioned, they try to keep it alive later on in the movie where it's like, he makes the comment, oh, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, but even they don't even do anything with that.
Right.
I brought that up to Irina where I was expecting something from that. It was hinting at something, but they never, ever bring it up again.
Yeah, it's not really paid off in the end.
So let's talk about his replacement, his temporary replacement, Scud, played by Norman Reedus. How do we feel about this guy? Like, my first impression was like, why would Blade ever align himself with this scummy-looking dude?
Less scummy-looking dude.
I think it's probably because in some way he sort of reminds him of Whistler, kind of like a lesser version of one, because he has that same sort of nonchalant attitude about, I don't know, just
kind of like a redneck version of somebody who's intelligent.
In Blade,
that sounded really mean.
I think it was like he recognized like he does need an assistant, and this guy like circumstantially he found him. It worked out at the time.
Yeah,
better to just like keep one person involved instead of keep him under your watch, and also probably the mechanical talent was obviously a plus.
But and we'll get to it, but there's a plot development later on that he knows all along who he is.
No, not all along.
Or a good amount of the time.
Well, when he gave himself away.
No.
Either way.
No, Blade said that he knew from the beginning.
No, he did not. There's a specific line we talked about.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
It's fair.
As far as his character goes, like normally this kind of character would kind of irk me and just kind of put me off, but actually wasn't bothered by his attitude.
Yeah. His name is slipping me. His name is slipping right now, but the guy who played the original John Carter from Terminator 2, like this reminds me of like what he would grow up to be. Like this is like this would be his role.
It reminds me of the guy from The Walking Dead.
Oh, weird. Daryl?
I wonder why.
Yeah, they're very similar. And Boondock Saints, now that you
almost as if it's the same actor.
Yeah, what else is he in?
So I'm gonna cut to the chase here. I think the action in this is lesser than the first one. I think there's a lot more CGI here, particularly when the red-eyed ninja people raid his little hideout. Which, by the way, they have this long, drawn-out fight, and then they pull their masks up, and they're like, "Hey, we just wanted to give you a message."
Yeah, that was weird.
There's a couple points to this that I think that's a Del Toro thing. There's much ado about nothing. And
it's just let's
I
just
think
have a
that
cool
can be
fight.
applied to some plots of this movie as well. But
in general, though, that fight scene I think is one of the coolest fight scenes. I think that you say there's a lot of CGI. No, there's a little bit of CGI, mostly not CGI. And then CGI they do use, they back up the camera, and it's when they're fighting in the air. There's a little bit of that ragdoll rubbery effect, but it's far enough where you don't see the texture issues. And then they land, and then they jumps back straight into the hand-to-hand combat. So I think it's very effective.
I thought there was a lot of abnormal movements. I would have much preferred the, physical force of, the more lumbering but deliberate. I don't want to say lumbering because Wesley Snipes isn't slow by any means, but you feel like there's more of a
boxer fighting versus
pull back
sort of
and
martial
punch
arts.
to his moves and stuff.
No, it's not. It's not like boxer fighting. The first one is definitely not boxer.
No, I'm not
fighting.
saying boxing. I'm just saying that the emphasis is the sort of brute force of boxing versus like the lean speed fighting of kung fu.
Right.
So here's the thing about the first one, and I'll argue Reese's side. The choreography in this might still be better, but Blade's a strong dude. You bet he's going to be using his strength. So his martialistic style there
he knows martial arts.
Yeah, I know. And that's that. And he makes use of his force, his brute force, which has a lot of power.
Yes, and now he's fighting people who are stronger than the first movie.
Yeah. But
substantially, I would say.
I think it's just expanding. Like, it's, the first one, Shotokan, Hokkaido, or Aikido. I mean, it's just different styles. Here's Wushu. Like, you have more use of the sword and elements. Like, I think it's just kind of expanding that, just like John Wick. Again, I'll draw a comparison.
Yeah.
The first one, he uses certain tactics, and then the second one, he develops and branches out. And I think it's just expanding the talent of the character. And it does definitely, in my opinion, doesn't go full Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Like, it doesn't go that extreme. It's just a different polish to that. And like I said earlier, I think the best way to describe it, it's still deliberate, it's still choreographed, it's just, stylistically different.
Yeah.
Although there are a couple of scenes where he does like that bicycle kick.
I approve.
Anyway,
I think he did a pro wrestling WWE move.
Yes, he did. And there were multiple situations of that. I watched this with Irina, where you left the room at the time. I was talking to somebody, but where I was like, this is straight up trying to appeal to an audience. Like,
it was cool, though.
Yeah, I liked it.
So let's talk about Overlord Eli Damaskinos, who thought that this guy was a good guy.
this blue-looking alien with veins on his head.
He looks like a
out of marble.
shriveled vampire ball sack.
Yeah.
Like,
dude, that is exactly what I thought when I saw it.
I'm like, no way this guy is one of the forces of good.
Yeah.
But
there's the main villain and then the other villain, and they both just look like,
because
one's
both
blue
Reapers.
balls, the other is, maybe been squeezed a bit too hard.
My gosh.
Fair enough. But
I'd like to see a chart.
Yeah, anyway, I thought it was fairly obvious that he was actually a bad guy, but that's just because he looks like a supervillain.
Yeah.
But
I don't know that we're supposed to say they're great. It's just a temporary alliance of, facing the same direction. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
That's
temporarily, at least,
At least
U.S.
for
and
now.
Stalin kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of the whole movie in a way.
Yeah, that's true. It is kind of set up as this kind of shaky temporary alliance, and I do think Blade, makes some comment about that too.
Yeah,
Just
early on, he's like, they're
yeah.
definitely going to screw us over at some point, so we just got to be ready of them.
Yeah, so I can let that pass. That's totally fine. I just thought it was funny that we were meant to, kind of, let's team up with
Especially
this guy.
since both oyster faces look exactly the same, pretty much. Oh, he's my son.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I never would
what a
have guessed.
surprise. Anyway, so he relays the message that this Novak, whatever his name is, Nomak, is spreading some sort of Reaper virus.
Yeah.
And it's, apparently super contagious, and it changes vampires very quickly into whatever Novak is, or Nomak is.
A Reaper.
Yeah, Reaper.
And he's
Reapers.
basically patient 0, so he's the first of them.
Yeah. So I'll say the threat in this one is pretty substantial. I think our first, fight with one of these things really establishes how, resilient they are. And, you don't want to mess with these things. So the stakes are real. If there's one positive thing over the first movie for me, it's that, these villains seem much more effective and imposing than Frost did.
I think they're stronger. Movie. They're like vampires on steroids.
Their bloodlust is also stronger as well. Like, they have to be constantly feeding whereas a vampire can be satisfied for a little
And I mean,
longer.
to Silver and Garlic.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, the first one's cronies, and this one is almost a hive mind.
Yeah.
And that's kind of...
Mm-hmm.
Also, this is when I started to question, like, what happened to Karen from the first movie?
She just left.
She just left.
She cured
realized
herself.
She realized after fighting vampires the whole movie that it wasn't for her.
Okay, let's be real. They were like, well, we want to introduce another girl for him, so...
Even though they don't do anything with that. But
They don't. Well, they do, but they don't.
Yeah, exactly. They do.
just like the first movie.
But very short-lived.
Exactly.
But yeah, I was kind of missing Karen. I kind of liked her contribution to the first film.
Hey,
I
but
did
at least
too.
you get Ron Perlman.
Yeah, that's the new girlfriend.
Yeah, which I was going to talk about next. What do we think about Ron Perlman? Is this the first movie that Del Toro worked with him on, and he's just been with him ever since. I think this is the first one.
Well, you have to notice he's got something interesting going on with his hair.
He doesn't have any on his head?
He has a ring around the back.
The friar cut.
Yep.
Yeah.
Except for
but it's like
going into a chin strap.
It's like if you take your beard and it goes all the way up to your ear where your sideburns are, and you're like, normally people are like, that's where I want to cut it, and they're like, no,
let me connect it to the back.
It's basically like sunglasses that you want to hook to the back of your head.
Yeah. And I guess this is an opportunity for you, David, to talk about the whole blood pack and all their names if you want.
Well, real quick, before you do that, just to talk about, what's his name, the character, Pearlman's character.
Reinhardt.
Yeah, so Irina brought up the little bit of a racial, like, social thing in the first movie, and I think this one was a little bit more deliberate because I think they were doing promos in Germany, and someone said something to Wesley Snipes that was, racially insensitive, to say the least, and it was basically that "do you blush" line, and so they incorporated that in the movie deliberately. So these guys are definitely aimed at being, that Aryan type.
Dude, that's kind of cool, though, because whenever I first heard it, I thought, wait, what?
Now that there's an actual meaning behind it.
Now that meaning's there, I was that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, David, did you want to talk about the group?
No, I didn't really. No, I wondered why they each had like a code name. I don't know. They're also very weird code names. I don't know. It felt like
This is like the X-Men.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it felt like a superhero group, like
Chupa and
you're
Priest.
Iceman, you're Chupa.
You're Chupa.
Also, the incorporation of this group, I think, dilutes the strength of, or the depth of Blade's character. There's a lot less of him on screen because of all these other characters that you're adding into the mix that you're devoting screen time to.
So an Ocean's situation here.
Almost. I just feel like I don't get enough of Blade throughout the midsection of this movie. You see him, yeah, he's there, but they're also giving lip service to a lot of these other characters that I really don't care about. And this should be like Blade's show, but there's a good span of time where you just don't see him. And that was not the case with the first movie. And when you have a person like Wesley Snipes in the lead position, I think the camera should be on him for the majority of the time.
Especially since it's called Blade.
Yeah. And that's not to say that this part of the movie is bad. I'm still enjoying myself.
Right.
I just feel like Blade was slightly diminished here compared to the first movie where it's just like you get a full dose of it.
Maybe it's because the fact that the first one was more of an intro to his character, whereas this one is building the world.
Yeah.
You learn a little bit more about these people he has to work with, and I was definitely okay with it.
Yeah.
I think that when they're fighting and you get to know more about these villain friends, not friends, but I don't know, forced colleagues in a way, he has to work with these vampire villains.
Yeah. Well, then maybe what I needed, I'm okay with that, him being forced into this, position that he doesn't want to be in. I would have liked more of him, giving funny quips or saying...
Wesley Snipes doesn't give funny quips.
Well, not funny quips, but retorts,
He was riffing with Ron Perlman quite a bit. I mean, I didn't mind it. I actually enjoyed the team-up aspect of it. Maybe they could have pared down a few members, but, Ron Perlman especially was the main foil for him, and they're always at odds at each other's throats. And at one point, they're in that club, and he's like, Ron Perlman's character is pointing a gun at him with a laser sight on it, and then he's like, it would be so easy, but Wesley Snipes, or Blade, is already onto him with, one discreetly already a step ahead of him, and so that part of it I enjoyed.
I liked that moment.
Yeah,
for sure.
So if they, probably pared down the team a bit and focused on more of that interaction, then I think they could have developed that better instead of...
I really
one
like
guy
the scene
doesn't
where
speak English, and then his crazy girlfriend. Like, keep a few members, but pare it down a little bit.
Yeah,
right.
I really like the scene where he plants the explosive on the back of his head. Yeah. Just that totally, like, I have complete control over you. I could end you at any moment. You don't even understand. But yeah, that was good.
Baiting him.
Let's move on with the story here. On Blade's advice, the team starts by investigating the House of Pain, a nightclub frequented by vampires. They encounter the Reapers and discover they are much stronger and tougher than normal vampires. Nomak arrives and holds Nisa hostage. When Blade arrives, Nomak asks him why they are fighting, as they both hate vampires. However, as once vampires have been killed, the Reapers will simply move on to kill the humans. Blade strikes Nomak with his anti-vampire weapons, but the effects are minimal. Nomak gains the upper hand, but a burst of sunlight reflects off of Blade's sword, burning Nomak. Blade kills Priest after he becomes infected and begins to transform. Lighthammer is also infected, but hides it. Whistler deserts his post, and Scud barely survives a Reaper attack. Whistler reveals that he followed a Reaper lagging behind and discovered it trapped at a larger sewer entrance. The group takes the lone Reaper back to a safe house for further observation. After the Reaper dies from thirst, the dissection of its corpse reveals that most Reapers tend to burn out within 12 hours if they do not feed, as well as having an additional layer of bone, which protects the front of the heart, leaving sides of the heart unprotected. However, the Reapers are still vulnerable to sunlight. Having learned of this prime weakness, Whistler and Scud create UV projectors for the team. Blade states that their best edge is to search for the Reaper nest in the sewer at dawn, placing the entire blood pack at risk.
All right, so we have this Suicide Squad getting ready to go down into the basements, trying to fight these Reapers.
Yeah, and we already kind of talked about the blood pack a little bit.
To continue on to that team aspect, I think it does develop Blade's character as a little bit of dominant force too, and like he takes charge of that group. He's like, "You're gonna listen to me. It's my way or the highway, and we're gonna hunt in daylight. Get over it. Like you better figure it out." So I mean, there was some element of that where, yeah, he's not in a direct combat situation, but he's still in charge of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could be completely wrong. I just felt more of Wesley Snipes in the first movie than I did in this one.
No, I get it. It's just that they're not showing him in the same way.
Yeah, it's a lone wolf movie versus, the head of an operation
Team up
movie.
Yeah.
I think that does kind of, it is sort of impacted by the fact that the first movie took the time to kind of load him up with emotional moments, where this one doesn't really. You know, like you've already had the death of Whistler, you've already had the death of his mother. You know, what's left? I guess we'll just kind of have some fun torching some vampires and then encountering a new virus.
Yeah, he already got
of
Whistler
weird
back,
monsters.
which was supposed to be a big mission for him, but we missed all that in the montage.
They also show the fact that Whistler and him might have issues between them? Question mark.
Nah, man. That's not going to happen.
Well, I mean, they definitely try to make you feel like that.
Yeah. My point is, though, there isn't enough of an emotional roller coaster for you to feel any more from his character than just the straight up Blade lone wolfing it.
Yeah.
Except for the love they build between him and Nisa.
Also,
Him
this
and
is
Reinhardt.
this is starting to feel even more Hellboy, even though I know Hellboy came after this.
Mm-hmm.
But I got that whole team. I mean, you got the Ron Pearlman element. It's a team of people that kind of, go into this underground area that, normal humans don't know about.
It's definitely
and they're going to take out supernatural creatures. It's just very reminiscent of all of that.
The design of that, whatever those ninja
Reapers.
dudes were at the
ninja
beginning,
dudes.
they're very reminiscent of
The blood packed.
No, I know exactly
With the red
He
eyes.
likes
the
he
oculars.
likes goggles. He likes
He
goggles.
does.
it's
really
those
like
goggles,
goggles.
and it's that guy with the sand.
From
and
the from the first movie
from the
of
first
Hellboy.
one.
The guy with the swords. I can't
and
remember
the swords,
his name.
yeah.
I remember the one you liked a lot.
I can't remember his name either, but it's
German.
It's much better in Hellboy.
This is something I'm really going to
very
struggle
much
with
like that.
in my review because I saw Hellboy before this. But it seems like this one is derivative.
Yeah.
Even though this one came first.
But it's not.
So I have to really switch that perspective because it's like, no, this one did that first.
When did you watch Hellboy?
I've seen...
Well,
Would
okay,
you
yes,
say
we
the
all
Reapers
know.
are derivative of Predator?
I did think of Predator when I saw
with the mandibles and all that.
mandibles, yeah.
I was thinking of plants for some reason. It made me think of like a
Venus flytrap.
Yeah, kind of like where it's opening up and you see all these weird tendrils and their teeth, and I don't know.
Yeah, they're pretty...
That facial design, the bifurcated jaw, has been done quite a bit, but...
Yeah. I think this was probably my favorite action sequence, though, where it's just like this floods of these creatures in the sewers, and they're using the light grenades or the UV grenades, whatever they are. What are they exactly?
They're
UV is
UV
light,
grenades.
so both are correct.
Yeah, cool.
So This is the one thing I thought was a little weird. We have this uber strong new vampire or creature that's supposed to be stronger in every way, but they're still super vulnerable to light. So
they're still vampire.
Gotta have one weakness.
Well, I know, but like, couldn't you just have like a flashlight or something? I don't know, like just hand them all a UV thing and just flash it on them. I don't know.
Here's lightsabers.
There you go.
Here's where the issues with plot started taking form. Where like, what's the motive here? Like, we're just gonna go explore on an exploratory mission and try to kill as many as possible. Like, what's the end goal?
Yeah, I think also the fact that they just seem very ill prepared.
Yeah.
Like in this nightclub scene, one of the members sees one, and then all he says is, "Oh crap, I lost it. Keep your eyes open." You know, like when these are obviously like bloodthirsty creatures that it's very difficult to survive. So I don't understand why they're handling it like it's just some runaway criminal.
Let's all split up like in a stereotypical scary movie.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and just the sewer scene, it's like they have that whole lead up of we're going to hunt at night, going to be at a disadvantage, but then they're underground the whole time. So unless they went to the surface, which a couple of them did, it didn't really matter.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what's going on here.
But David, you're talking about how, couldn't they all just get lights? And I was thinking, man, why doesn't Blade just wear some, clothes that have like UV lights coming out each direction, and all he's got to do is just like,
Scud
move around a little bit.
Yeah, then he can work with his teammates.
Huh? Yeah.
He can work with his teammates. Then.
Yeah, but he could just say, all right, I don't need the teammates, and I can just do this by myself.
Just grab those big spotlights like from the first movie, or even in the beginning of this movie. But, just obliterate everything.
Yeah, I know. I'll just like it's a dumb argument on my part, but it's just fun to entertain. Like, oh, that would have been an easy.
No, there's a lot of things I think that could have easily foiled the plot of this movie that they kind of just have. You just kind of have to write it off.
You have to think. All right, it's for the movie.
Yeah,
and I think by this point we've been introduced of there's a mole in the group kind of thing,
right?
For sure. But then we're like, is it supposed to be Whistler? Is it going to be Scud? Is it going to be
Nyssa
or Ron Pearlman or whatever? And it's like it's trying to create suspense and tension, but like I don't really care that much because I know the end result's going to be the same.
I thought they did a pretty decent job of hiding that Scud is that eventual
because they draw attention
or whatever.
away from him,
but they show him like bonding with Whistler, and you kind of like, oh, maybe I do kind of like this Scud guy.
Yeah, he does grow on you, I think.
Yeah. Ooh, one of my favorite scenes though is when they actually get a hold of one of the bodies of these Reaper creatures, and they do kind of an autopsy dissection.
That looked really good.
It looked really realistic. I was like,
that was good. I saw that too.
I was impressed with the
I saw that too.
This is another Del Toro thing where he's like really fascinated with anatomies, and he speaks on how he was particularly interested in the anatomy of fictional creatures. So he would grow up just drawing anatomies of imaginary things like gnomes and the way dragons would operate and where the fire would come from. So
which is kind of cool.
He brings that here, as well as Hellboy 2 with the little tooth fairy creatures. You remember that? Where they were inspecting
their big old buck teeth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gosh, and the guy with like the eyeballs on his hands.
Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh yeah, Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really liked it because up until this point you see a lot of these AJ, what's it called again? Where the
bifurcated jaw.
The bifurcated jaw. They definitely show that a couple times, and I think the CGI on this, maybe this is just my opinion, but I think it does a very, very good job of jumping between the practical and CGI on that.
CG's better in this than in the last one.
And when they do that autopsy, they really show you everything. It feels like it's real. And they show the sections that have the venom that can paralyze people.
The ducts.
Yeah.
Wait, was none of that practical?
No, it was all practical in that scene.
Oh, okay.
That one specifically.
I was gonna say you made it sound.
I'm just
like
saying it's jumping.
CG.
The jumping from when they do the CGI to that scene. I didn't notice it at first. It was after talking to Irina that I realized.
Yeah.
And the subtle thing of like human blood is red, vampire blood is blue, Reaper blood is yellow. Like just kind of that. It's the small things that create a fully fleshed out experience.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. While searching for the nest, Lighthammer succumbs to the infection, killing Snowman and chasing Verlaine up a manhole ladder before both die of sunlight exposure when Verlaine removes the manhole cover. Chupa turns on Whistler and attacks him. Only to be killed by a group of Reapers. Assad is ambushed, dragged underwater, and killed. While attempting to escape, Whistler is stopped by Nomak, who reveals information about Damaskinos and gives him a royal seal ring. Using a special UV emitter bomb pack, Blade kills all of the Reapers with the exception of Nomak and rescues Reinhardt and Nisa, but is betrayed by Damaskinos and his people, who stun Blade unconscious. Damaskinos reveals that he created the Reaper virus in order to create a new race of vampires based on Blade, and that Nomak was simply a failed experiment. Whistler throws the royal seal ring at his feet and demands the full truth. Damaskinos confirms that Nomak is in fact his son. Scud reveals himself to be a familiar loyal to Damaskinos. Blade replies that he always knew of Scud's true allegiance. Blade kills Scud with the explosive charge he had earlier placed on Reinhardt. Damaskinos then orders his scientists to dissect Blade so they can learn how to replicate his abilities. Nisa confronts Damaskinos about his lies. Damaskinos states that for the survival of the vampire race, he is willing to sacrifice everything, including his own family. After escaping his captors, Whistler takes Blade to a blood pool, where he regains enough strength to kill Reinhardt and his men. Alright, so we got still some sewer action there, so we can skip past that since we already talked about that. So let's go into all of the Damaskinos stuff.
Before we do that,
Damaskinos.
the showdown fight between Nomak and Blade on that, it's like kind of a chapel.
Oh, yeah.
Or cathedral where it's all the scaffolding. I just wanted to bring that up because I thought, we're going to have a difference on the view of choreography, but the other element is the gadgets here. All the weaponry were kind of elevated and refined in this movie as well, which I like.
Yeah.
Right.
They kind of hint at that in the first one, and they do some cool things with that. But yeah, it's definitely on another level in this movie. But I don't feel like we differentiate too much on the choreography. I still like it.
It's just different.
Yeah, I just prefer it in the first one, but I can still definitely...
That's fair.
Yeah, I still appreciate everything that's happening in this movie. I just, I missed the old style.
Yeah.
It hit you right in the first movie, and that's nothing to be taken lightly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Sorry for derailing it.
Oh, no. So let's talk about Damaskinos and how we always knew that he was going to, be the bad guy and that Nomak is his son. That, as obvious as it seems in hindsight, I still didn't draw the connection that it was his son just because I'm stupid. Yeah, I'm stupid. Okay.
Well, no, you're not stupid. I think we expected a betrayal, like even Blade said himself. But, having a direct connection as being his progeny, that's a little bit more direct than we expected. It just, all of this, really, brings you to the question of why. What was the whole point of this charade? Like, why loop Blade in on this scheme to bring him around to fight these Reapers into this team if you're just going to, try to kill him in the end? Like, you could have done that without all this,
it kind of makes it seem irrelevant, but Blade's got to go on a mission, I guess, but you didn't have to set it up this way. It could have been, Blade was researching something, has an encounter with Nomak, and then he kind of, tries to unravel that mystery. I don't know, Yeah,
I just don't understand Damaskinos' end goal here is like, if this is what you're trying to accomplish, the way you went about it, where you're trying to be devious just for the sake of being complex or complicated, like you can still obfuscate what you're doing and be secretive and hide it and do it in a way that you're actually probably taking people by surprise instead of making this charade. It just didn't make sense.
Yeah, the only part that makes sense is he probably thought that, Blade's the only one that can take out Nomak, but how do I also, take out Blade afterwards? It's just, I don't know.
I think this is around when it's like the story is just kind of losing me because I don't feel the impact of these reveals much. I'm just kind of watching it happen, and maybe that's partly because of the choreographed nature of the fighting as well. I just don't feel the threat of it, so I'm sort of waiting it out to see how everything ends. In a way, I'm sort of lulled into not really worrying at all. You know what I mean? And I think I do enjoy the choreography just for the way it's constructed, and I know Del Toro was intentional about that because he wanted it to come across as more anime-like and more comedic than actually painful, because we know he's capable of it expressing painful shots, especially if you watch things like Pan's Labyrinth. He says like those scenes hurt you, but in this he didn't want it to come across that way.
It's kind of like Saturday morning cartoons almost at the end of this.
Yeah, it was cartoonish and comedic.
Like, honestly, as great as the design on the villains is, they do seem like just really well made, like Power Ranger villains.
Yeah, they kind of do.
The bifurcated jaw, as we talked about, that's really cool. But apart from that, when they're not, whipping their weird tongue fangs out, it is Saturday morning cartoons.
They look like, Snoke or Romulans.
Yeah.
Snoke and
Romulans.
Romulans.
Gollum.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also, this movie has no, real stakes to it apart from this minor love interest that's not even really touched on at all. Apart from, like, she, has this sunset scene or sunrise scene where she passes away, and that's like, okay, I guess I was meant to feel something there, but I didn't.
Yeah,
but the first one,
it's like more redemptive for her than for Blade.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. It's just it lacks the substance that the first one had. The first one had that magnificent Whistler death scene that I thought was done so well, and this one lacks all the subtlety of that scene. I know the rest of the first one's still
this one's
brute
somewhat
force.
Emotionless.
Yeah.
As far as they go,
it's just like let's up the ante with the action, make it cooler. Have this team up aspect, but
introduce a new monster.
Oddly enough, I feel like there is more intent in this movie to have character development, but the subtlety of the first one worked better than the on the nose approach here.
Yeah. And sorry, I kind of jumped ahead in the plot, so I guess we can just move on. But unless y'all have anything else to say about this portion, we can close it out.
Not much.
Anything? Okay. Nisa and Damascanos attempt to escape, but Nisa locks the exit door, preventing Damascanos from escaping, while Nomak catches up to them. Seeking revenge, Nomak tracks Damascanos to his private heliport and kills him. Nisa then offers herself to Nomak to be bitten. He infects Nisa with the virus and drinks her blood. Blade then arrives, and Nomak offers Blade the same alliance he did at the House of Pain. However, Blade simply tries to stab Nomak, breaking his sword. However, Nomak survives, and the two fight. The fight starts equal, but Nomak's superior strength and healing abilities give him the edge. However, Blade eventually stabs his broken sword blade through the side of Nomak's chest and into his bone-protected heart, slipping it through the bone plates on the side. However, it is not quite deep enough to kill. Nomak then commits suicide by shoving the sword all the way into his wounded heart, fulfilling Nisa's dying wish. Blade takes her outside and embraces her as she dies, while watching the sunrise before she is turned into a Reaper.
I know Noah touched on the twist reveal of Scud being the mole, and that kind of lack of impact. It was so sudden, just like kind of that weird laugh. It was like, "How you moron!" Like I was in on it the whole time, just cheesy.
I know.
But then,
it was just so
the
quick.
whole bomb. Like it was kind of a cool double twist though, where Blade was like, "Yeah, I knew it was you the whole time," and the bomb was really loaded, or bomb was really a bomb. That was fun. I just wanted to bring that up because it came to my mind after.
It was fun, but it definitely relied on a lot of like circumstances or coincidences happening. Like he would. That means Scud would have to have the bomb in his hands at some point, and that he was anticipating that Scud would have that bomb in his hands after.
Yeah, you don't want to dig into the timing of everything.
Yeah. So I thought that whole thing, while superficially is fun, but when you analyze it, you're like, wait, why would he try and kill Scud anyways? That other dude is much more dangerous.
My thought was that he didn't really care who had it. He just knew that it
It would come in handy.
it would come in handy at some point. So.
But that's the thing though. He had the option to kill Reinhardt
I
first,
suppose.
and then he decided let's unlatch it to see what this guy will do.
I think it's because he, like he said in that moment, he knew Scud was working for them. There was a certain point. What was the line, Irina? It was he knew he was working with them since he betrayed them.
He says
that was
two things. One, I've been onto you since they turned you. And two, it's not a dud.
Yeah. I do love that line.
Yeah,
but
I do,
yeah, you're right though. It does make you kind of like reanalyze the rest of the movie and like, wait, was this set up properly? I don't know. Like, I don't have the time to actually figure it out.
Yeah.
But it was like,
Yeah, you're right. I think it might have some holes, but it made me think that some point along the way he figured it out.
Yeah, it's with you long enough to keep you from thinking about it too much.
Yeah. You know what happened was, well, we kind of need to have a way for this guy to not die immediately. What's a good way to do that? Oh, yeah, the bombs are dead. Oh, yeah, let's make it a betrayal.
Yeah.
And then the showdown between him and...
Nomak.
Reinhold.
Oh, Reinhardt, yeah.
Reinhardt. Yeah, that was pretty cool. That's where you have the Crystal Method name of the game, the infamous song.
That was cool.
And then you have, that was an awesome scene for this movie. So
that's our new metal
scene. It was good.
The slicing in half from the crotch up.
Ooh,
that was our Mortal Kombat scene. That was our fatality moment.
Yep.
A little CGI, a little dodgy, but yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, I couldn't let us talk about this movie without mentioning that scene because that's probably the most infamous scene from this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about that final Nomak fight between him and Blade. I thought this was a pretty cool knockdown, drag out, fight. Like some good choreography there, as we've talked about.
One of my issues with this is that they couldn't think of another way to like it pretty much follows the same formula that the first one did. Oh, let's knock out Blade. Now let's give him some blood and he's powered up again. Now he can fight. And they did that exact same thing in the first one. Mm-hmm. And it was cool in the first one, but then they did this one. I was like, yeah, he's ready to fight. And I love when he's fighting. But it's also like, well, you couldn't have thought of another way to, put him out of commission shortly. Or maybe just have him be, held up somewhere and he's trying to get there. And then he gets there at that last second. And
this one, he definitely seemed like he was on the ropes at some points and definitely had... an uphill battle, and especially when the sword breaks, and there's some pretty good up and down in the overall fight.
Yeah.
So this is another scenario where I have to separate myself from Hellboy 2, because Prince Nuala, who's the villain of Hellboy 2, is very similar to this Nomak guy. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like a misunderstood, but still villainous character.
Right.
And they both kind of share similar deaths in both movies, but it's executed so much better and it has so much more meaning in Hellboy 2. But, the germ of that idea was here in this movie first. So I'm still just kind of like I didn't feel much when he died, but you could tell that they were trying to, maybe I do kind of actually slightly feel something for Nomak.
Right.
But ultimately I don't. It's just, it was like, okay, well, he killed himself.
Yeah. And then the whole line of the pain is gone finally or something.
Well, he's feeling a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely got Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
with
I'll
Barbosa.
say
It's the reverse.
I did like that moment, though. I thought it was kind of cool. Like, he didn't want to be there anymore. And it hinted at, his existence being he wants to go, but can't really.
I wanted them to seed that earlier, though, in that
right.
case.
Yeah,
show me from the beginning that there's more complexity to this character. Because in the beginning, he just seems like, a conniving...
Just kind of blood-driven and,
not a tragic monster who's conflicted at who they are in their nature.
Yeah, exactly.
This gave me... It's a less deep Ghost in the Shell...
Yes.
Kind of villain.
What was his name in that one?
I don't remember.
You know what we're talking about?
If it's
the guy that was her friend before and turned
Kuze.
into...
Yeah, Kuze.
Yeah. That was it. But this is a similar character, except I think Kuze was done a little better.
Yeah, I would agree.
But they have that kind of tragic, they're stuck in this experimental body.
They like hoodies.
And they're, against and yet with the main character at the same time,
They've decided not to fight who they think they are, the monster that they actually are. They've resigned themselves to being a monster.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I see that.
So I kind of liked him. I think I liked him better than I liked the first villain, but
without that last scene of that little bit of character development, I don't think he would have shown that at all.
That's true.
Yeah. So Nisa dies. Did we feel anything about, around that?
The sunset scene was kind of touching, but if they had built it up better, then it would have landed better.
Yeah, right. A movie that actually did that better was I don't know if y'all have seen 30 Days of Night.
Yeah.
I think you made me watch that.
I made you? Like I strapped you down?
I pretty much said this on like at least 10 episodes.
Yeah.
You've made me watch a lot of movies.
But spoilers if you don't want to be spoiled, but Josh Hartnett in that movie becomes a vampire in a sort of heroic act and is then, faces the sunrise at the end of the movie and just kind of starts to disintegrate. And the way they do it in that movie is it's very well done.
That's
it's probably
a
the best,
good movie.
Yeah, it's the best version of that I've seen. And this movie kind of does that, but, I've not grown attached to this Nisa character. She's not done anything to really sway me.
Her acting wasn't the greatest either. It didn't help.
No.
You know what movie also did it better? And it is not a vampire movie? Black Panther.
I thought you were going to say Tomb
definitely.
of the Dragon Emperor.
No. Wait. What? Wait. Repeat that?
No, we're not.
Later.
We can do it later. But yeah, definitely Black Panther did that for sure.
Yeah, they had that... gosh, that's a beautiful scene. Yeah. We won't talk too much about it, but that's a good scene.
Yeah. Oh, another thing I'll say, this movie doesn't have that the first one does. It doesn't have a kick-ass ending moment where it's like, all right, next adventure,
No, it doesn't, but it ends it pretty well.
It's not like the first one, though.
Maybe not. Maybe I don't know. I think they're comparable. I mean, the other one is like adventure goes on, but this one was like, yeah, you got that guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think they needed
Different
more
vibes.
This is before Marvel did their sneak peek at the end of the trailers.
Yeah.
It's kind of what they needed, I think.
Yeah.
What are they called?
Stinger.
Stingers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts on the story before we move on?
I personally felt during that Nissa scene, I think that she wasn't the best actress, and I don't think that I think they could have done it better.
Yeah, her line delivery was pretty flat and.
Yeah, but I understood as I was watching what was happening, and I understood the development between them. It wasn't as confusing as some of the other ones, so maybe I latched onto that one.
In my opinion, they're telling you what you should think of the relationship versus showing you.
Yeah,
exactly.
That is fair. I guess it was easier for me. It was the easy fruit to grab. It was understandable compared to some of the other things I wasn't as certain on. But when that scene happened, I get it. I thought it was well executed.
I thought I'll actually agree with David on this one. I mean, I can actually agree with both sides. I thought
it's easy.
It definitely needed more development throughout the movie, but that would have been a really good payoff had they developed it really well.
Yeah.
And maybe her. For this kind of movie, I wasn't really focusing on her acting chops. And maybe in my mindset, I wasn't thinking it was too bad.
It's because she was a nothing character.
I mean, yeah, sure, but a lot of characters in this are nothing characters.
Yeah.
Well, I'll pose a question for you here. As far as villains go, Damaskinos or Deacon Frost? Which one's better?
I like Deacon Frost more. I think he just had more personality, and Damaskinos, you just don't ever really see him. He's just kind of like, I'm an old vampire that lives in an underground chapel.
Yeah,
Guys,
I can't believe I'm saying it, but Frost.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say there's an easy choice here that all of you are overlooking.
Okay.
Ron Perlman.
Yeah, I mean, but he's like he's more of like the wild card villain.
Ron Perlman is the villain I want.
He's Yeah, that.
This does kind of bring up like a bit of a problem with the movie, though. Like, it's got a villain problem. Who's central
Who is
villain?
the villain?
You know?
I think Damaskinos is obviously the
we
villain.
all
but
are
he's-
villains.
I think
tricky.
I think the point is that there's not like a clear-cut overall villain. I think it's intentionally done that way.
So kind of like Spider-Man 3, right?
A little bit.
Three
well,
villains?
there is one that's an actual villain. That's Venom.
Except for we also have the Sandman.
Yeah, but he's not really a villain.
He's misunderstood.
definitely
Well,
a
okay,
villain.
he's.
We're not
the
getting
villain-
into a Spider-Man 3 argument.
He's in the villain's shoes, but eventually he like is like, oh, by the way, I have a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
bad reason. He's still a villain.
Yeah.
As opposed to other
he's,
villains,
yeah,
they
he's
don't
a,
have
he's,
reasons.
So
He's a villain.
Nomac's kind of the Sandman.
Yeah.
Damaskinos is what?
Dude, no, he's Snoke. That's what he is.
Yeah.
He's there
He's the puppet
manipulating the
master.
stuff, but he's not really on screen that much, and then he dies.
He's just kind of there.
Actually, he's exactly Snoke.
Yeah, he's just there.
Gosh, and they both have ball heads.
Ball sack heads.
Well, one of them's a little more broken, I guess.
And Reinhardt's like Crossbones, I guess.
Yeah, that is exactly who I was
Okay.
thinking of.
All right, let's. Does anyone have any other comments on the story before we
Get us out of here.
get it out of here? Yeah, let's move on. We're gonna take a quick break, and on the other side, we will talk about this franchise. So we'll see you then.
Yeah, baby.
Welcome back. Let's talk about Blade 2. David, you got our scores over there? You want to pull them at random?
I want to do it at random.
Why'd you deliver it that way?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I guess we'll start with me. I was the last one before, now I'm the first. I gave this one an 8.
Stupid.
Well,
I'm just kidding. No.
David.
Reese.
There we go. There it is.
You also have to remember.
Remember.
Just really remember. Like, let
5th of
me
November.
send you a memory.
A memory?
All right. You got to make the noise though.
You got to do it quick.
Oh, whoa, dang, I got it full of force. Yeti's
Man.
kicking footballs in my face. What is that? The number 7 is flashing in my mind. Brendan Fraser, what are you doing there?
But we're missing what's her name.
And David shouting something.
Why is he
rewatchable.
naked?
Rewatchability
that's not the memory I
factor.
You weren't there for that memory, AJ.
But David, I'm getting. You gave The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor a 7 out of 10. Wow, that's just 1 point below Blade 2. But
no, not quite, because I was going to downgrade this one.
but proceed to your score.
I will proceed to my score. Thank you all.
You're welcome.
You are all the best.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
And to anyone
love
who
you, David.
listens that just loves this running joke. So anyway, I gave this one an 8. After talking about it, yeah, I'm definitely downgrading it to a 7.5. I still think that there's something about it that made it more enjoyable for me. I gave the original one a 7. I don't know what it is. There's something about this movie that I enjoyed more. Maybe it is because subconsciously I picked up on the Guillermo del Toro factor. I didn't know as I was watching it, because I'm just a bad podcaster, who the director was when I first watched this.
You don't
That
have to
doesn't make
admit
you a
that.
bad podcaster.
I don't care. Leave me alone. I'll say what I want.
Okay.
So I think that there was something about this movie that caught my eye that was better. But in the end, as you're reading the plot and watching it in the background without, audio, I was confused. I was kind of lost. I was like, wait, what happened? I don't even remember anymore. I completely lost what was going on a lot of the time, because there is a lot of mixed information in the fighting in the tunnels that just... I don't know. It just misses the mark a lot, but there's still high energy. I liked a lot of the new characters. In the end, though, it can't get that much farther than... It doesn't deserve an 8. I think that's in the end for me. That's where it's at.
7.5 though.
7.5 is good enough. Still better for me. I think my natural gut reaction.
All right, cool.
Next up is Reese with a 6, a sad 6.
A sad 6.
I don't know. I was kind of, not, I don't want to say blown away by Blade 1, but very surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I enjoyed how scrappy it was in its fighting scenes. As much as Frost wasn't a great villain, I thought he was still, it was still smarter to have a singular villain versus the dynamic in this one, which is just 3 juggling villains with different motives. But I just liked the focus of the movie versus this one, which I felt like its plotting was kind of all over the place. I also didn't enjoy the switch in choreography, even though I know it was done by Donnie Yen, and he's a great martial artist and all of that. I miss the Blade where it was just like, I can punch you in the face one time and you're down on the ground. Like
Boring.
No, it's the best way to do it.
Okay, that's fair.
But I still
love how quickly you switch sides.
I realized it wasn't my review.
I think this movie's also affected by, weirdly, Guillermo del Toro's future filmography.
Yeah.
It feels like the lesser version of later works that he's done. I feel like he's fully fleshed out some of the ideas that he came up with in this one, just better in future iterations. Specifically Hellboy 1 and 2. There's a lot of that going on in this movie. I'm not saying this movie he didn't try his best. I just feel like maybe he wasn't like quite at his peak performance level
I
yet.
agree. I think Del Toro needed this movie to get where he needed to go.
Yes.
I think that he definitely found his artistic style after this.
Either that or he wanted to stretch some artistic wings, but he was bound by the franchise.
It's early for him, or relatively early.
The thing, though, is I get the sense that he had a lot of freedom on this project because it's much different than the first Blade, and it definitely has his signature on it.
Yeah,
like this feels like a Del Toro movie. I'm just, his past movies, he hadn't done anything with a larger budget at this point. He'd done some, I want to say, kind of indie movies that are very well made. Like I love Kronos and The Devil's Backbone, but the only one that kind of dabbled in that, more sci-fi, bigger budget was Mimic, which I actually haven't seen. But Blade, I feel like he's working with a larger budget for once, and it's kind of new territory for him, and he's, getting to play around more with things, and that's cool. I just don't think this is a fully realized vision just yet. Like, he has something that he wants to say, but he hasn't said it yet. I don't know. But still like Blade 2. I don't think it's as good as Blade 1, but it's a 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go.
Well, in which case, next up, Irina with a 7.
Yeah, I think I'll stay with a 7 because stylistically I do enjoy this film, but I think that's one of its big issues is that to me it came across that Del Toro was more about the style than the substance in this film, and almost used it as a way to just explore his concept of vampires and sort of neglected all the other characters in the story. So I think that boils down to the kind of lack of movement in the plot where you don't really know what the point is, like what is the story necessarily. There's this new kind of mutated vampire, and that's an issue. But yeah, we've mentioned before, there isn't really a clear-cut villain, which can work in certain plot scenarios, but it's not really used in a way that makes sense here. So I think that's the ultimate problem, just that Guillermo del Toro was more focused on the creature design or, just kind of his overall vision of what he wanted to put into the movie rather than trying to stick to something that was in keeping with the first film. So
yeah,
that's my 7.
Blade
but
doesn't
it's still,
he doesn't really progress much
No.
from the beginning to end.
No, he kind of stays static. And
Yeah.
but other than that, I still find it fun, and I would still watch it again. It's just not the same as the first, and you don't feel like you really got anywhere from this movie.
Yeah.
All right, next up is AJ with an 8.
All right.
So I'm going to reiterate a lot of what David said and immediately take it down to 7.5. It was hard for me to grade this movie because I feel like it definitely kind of traded off on some things that the first did some things better, did some things worse. I really enjoyed the action of this movie. I enjoyed the fighting, the choreography of it. It's different, but I still enjoyed it, and I thought it was fun. I think I was definitely taken in by the William of the Bull polish that this had.
Yeah.
And the style of it. What's that?
I was just gonna say, does this feel better than the first one for you?
It's intangible for me. So I have definite flaws with this, or definite criticisms of this movie. The plot is pretty atrocious for me. It's kind of a non-issue almost, where the story doesn't make sense. It doesn't even need to have been told because it was just a circle of nothing. There's no point of it.
Ignore it.
At the same time, I enjoy seeing Wesley Snipes, and what elevated this movie, in my opinion, is his riffing with Ron Perlman. Ron Perlman's presence in this movie really elevates it. I enjoyed Scott's character as well. Unfortunately, Whistler took a backseat, and I didn't really appreciate his utilization in this movie, especially since they kind of just wrote off his whole character arc in the montage in the intro. So, and like I said before, they're telling you that there's supposed to be character development, but they don't show you. They don't actually create it organically. I did like the character design of the Reapers. I mean, it's still creepy. It's still a vampire, gruesome movie. And I did see this movie before I saw the Hellboy movies, so maybe that has some sway over it. Also, have a soft spot for Crystal Method, so that's a whole half point right there.
Crystal Meth?
Yeah, Crystal Method. There's a distinction, and not that they're mutually exclusive. Anyway, yeah, it's that intangible aspect of it, the fun, the action, the fighting of it that still brings it up for me. But the plot I cannot really forgive, and yeah, I think 7.5 is generous but still appropriate because I had fun with this movie. And I think Guillermo del Toro, I see his vision in this movie, and it just didn't really take form fully. That, like Reese said, has been kind of realized better in the Hellboy movies and his later works and his independent films. So
yeah,
it still captures the Blade tone of the first, and each movie has its own little spin on it. Each movie has its own polish. I think I'm glad that they both exist. But yeah, it's still, I still had fun with the movie is the bottom line.
Yeah,
Right.
I still definitely wouldn't cut out Blade 2. I like Blade 2.
Me neither.
I'm glad it exists.
All right, and last but not least, we have Noah with a 7.
Hey.
Yep. I'm actually gonna keep the 7. Like AJ said, this does some things better. It does some things worse. Overall, I had a good time with it. I can recognize that it's got a number of flaws, like, the plot's a little iffy. The villains aren't very strong. But also, I really like the choreography yet again. It's got that awesome sunglasses moment where he throws it to him.
Oh, yeah.
Catches it and just like...
Noah.
and kills everybody, and that's really cool. But yeah, that's about my review. I don't know. I think
Sunglasses.
I think it's
super cool.
It's a really fun movie. Maybe it's not as emotionally deep as the first one, even if they developed certain characters better. And I'll keep my 7.
All right.
Yeah, it's that substance or style over substance, but that style is actually really fun.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. AJ, you want to crunch those numbers?
All right, so we've got an average of the group at a 7. And for those who missed the last episode, 7.5 was our group average for Blade. That puts Blade 2 at, Sorry, my spreadsheet's acting up here. Okay,
No, you're
so
fine.
just below 28 Days Later, which was a 7.2, and above John Carter, which was a 6.8.
All right. I'm fine with that. 7. I'm glad it passed. Even though I gave it a 6. That makes me happy. Mm-hmm. All right, let's get into critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 57%. Almost fresh there, but not quite. With an audience score of 68%, which is just barely into the fresh zone. So positive, but, not like amazing. On Metacritic, this movie has a 52 with an audience score way up there with 8.7 and an IMDb score of 6.7, which is mixed positive for IMDb. So overall, I'd say, just like the first one, this is a mixed to positive situation when critics and audiences are factored in. And, judging by our scores, I'd have to agree with that.
Yeah.
That falls in line. So let's get on to the box office. Woo. This movie released on March 22nd, 2002. It was releasing against the second weekend of Ice Age.
The Meltdown.
And it was made,
that is so weird.
Yeah.
Ice Age was 2002.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I remember when I saw that.
Yeah.
Yep. And it was made on a budget of $54 million, which, if my memory serves me, is $9 million more than the first movie. So, slight uptick in budget there. So, worldwide box office, what do you guys think? Let's go with David first.
I want to start with a solid 150.
150? Irina?
Let's do 125.
125. You think it goes a little lower.
Yeah.
Noah?
What did you say the original budget was?
$54 million.
All right. I'm going to go with 180.
180.
Yet again.
AJ?
Well, I got to slot in between one of those. Let's say 170.
170.
The last person always gets the best spot because they can figure out who they can slide between.
Well, I was like, I wanted 150 originally, but do I go higher or lower than David?
Yeah.
So what was yours, David?
150.
David, you were closest.
Yeah.
To the movie. Worldwide, 155 million.
Dang.
Did it.
Which is a little bit above the first one. So, solid return on investment here. I would say equivalent to the first one's success. It made a little more worldwide, cost a little more to make.
So in the end, about equal.
Yeah, evens out pretty much. It did make more in the U.S. than the last one. The last one made 70 million. This one made 82 million domestically, off a 33 million opening weekend, which was a major uptick from the first one. The first one had a 17 million opening. The first one had legs. It legged it out to 70 million. This one did not have legs. It had a pretty substantial drop in weekend 2. I think it was like about 59%. Which means usually people really liked the first movie, so there was hype for this one, so everyone turned out for opening weekend, and then the hype died down after the second weekend. And that doesn't mean people didn't like the movie, it just means that, it built up hype. And that's what happens with bigger movies. They, just have a bigger opening and a bigger come down in weekend 2. So I don't think that's anything alarming. What would be alarming is if it wasn't able to double its opening weekend. That's usually signs that people really didn't like the movie, if it has just a massive drop the second weekend. But this one did all right. It did about like what you would do, with your typical kind of superhero release. Big opening.
Well, nowadays at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Back then, maybe not as much.
Yeah, but overall, the numbers, factor in. I would say this movie probably, made about the same amount of money back as the first one did. So pretty much a no-brainer that this one, continued the franchise. It didn't hurt it in any way. Critically, it did slightly better if you're just talking critics and not audiences. So I would say that's encouraging signs that you've got a healthy franchise on your hands. So yeah, that is why we have Blade Runner, or not Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
That's why we have
pulling an
Blade
AJ.
Yeah. That's why we have Sling Blade.
Sling Blade. Billy Bob Thornton.
But yeah, that's why we have Blade Trinity. Trilogy.
Get out of here. Reese, you're fired. Reese, you're out of
How
here.
many years have you had?
Blade Trilogy, guys. That's what we're talking about next week. But that's why we have Blade Trinity, the third film in this franchise. Is it the last? Who knows? We'll see. But in this one, it is another director swap. So who knows? Who knows? I will only say that I do not hear a lot of people talking about the third film in this franchise, which is usually a bad sign.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. All right, next week, Blade Trinity.
Blade Trinity.
Any closing words?
Blade Trinity.
All right, goodbye, guys.
Bye.
You obviously do not know whom you are f***ing with.